All of us just have this innate cultural understanding that bats are some of the spookiest critters around, but the scariest thing about them is actually the number of babies they kill. I'm willing to bet you weren't expecting that because I definitely wasn't. Now, don't get me wrong, they're definitely really creepy animals otherwise. There's lots of other things to talk about there. I mean, there's a reason that bats are everywhere around Halloween. They're pretty much standard fall decor at this point, at least as much as those leaf garlands your mom brings home from Michael's every October. Bats have also heavily influenced lots of lore for other scary creatures like vampires. They carry rabies, which is terrifying. They fly around silently and eerily in the night like stealthy little rat ninjas. And anytime a creepy movie wants to set the ambiance, the main characters are gonna have to fight through a swarm of bats. Though they definitely give a lot of people the heebie-jeebies, none of these things happens to be the spookiest fact about bats. So let's talk about how many baby deaths bats are responsible for each year and how, because the how is a really big one in this case. You're going to want to stick around to the end because you're going to figure out that bats might actually be the victims here too, and what a spooky Halloween twist that is. A study from just last year has blown open this crazy chain of death and destruction to wildlife biomes and their close connection to human health. Associate Professor Dr. Frank from the University of Chicago is the study author who discovered the link. The thing about bats is that they eat 40% of their own body weight or more in insects each and every night, and these include common crop pests. Unfortunately, bat populations in North America are steadily declining. In 2006, an invasive bat fungus crossed the ocean from Europe and showed up in a bat colony in Albany. The fungus is called Pseudogymnoascus destructans, and it manifests in a white fuzz on bat noses, which is why the condition is also colloquially referred to as white nose syndrome, which is good because I don't want to try to pronounce that again. Super creepy and fitting for today's video, but the fungus grows on hibernating bats while they're still and asleep in their lairs. Ooh, invasive, creepy, it's like helpless bat creatures. They're hanging there and... Research shows that it has the potential to wipe out an entire colony in just 5 years. A separate study from the North American Bat Conservation Alliance, published in 2023, which is pretty amusingly called the State of the Bats Report, found that 53% of North American bat species are now at risk of extinction. The companion study was published in the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences last year. To collect their research, 102 experts from across North America pinpointed the key threats to the 153 bat species on the continent. Climate change is the #1 cause of bat colony collapse, which is, a big shocker there. But white nose syndrome is also a huge and troublesome factor. As of the publication date of this study and Frank's study last year, 12 out of the 50 bat species that eat insects have been hit by this invasive fungus. I don't know if you've totally pieced together what this has to do with human health and infant mortality yet, but I'm about to tell you. You see, in areas where bat populations have declined, farmers have jacked up their use of pesticides by an average of 31%. And these exact same areas then go on to experience a higher infant mortality rate, which is now 8% above normal background. This accounts for 1,334 additional deaths than the average. Over 1,000 kids are dying in places where bats are threatened. You can't get any spookier than that. What's more, the data is actually so convincing that the study shows a causal link between bat decline and increased infant mortality. And anyone who reads a lot of studies or knows about science gets why that's so crazy. For the most part, the data can show us correlations, and correlation does not equal causation, which is a famous phrase in science. It's just a thing that's happening at the same time as another thing, and you need to have a whole lot of studies related to find enough evidence to say that something is causal. In this case, though, the bat fungus operated as a kind of natural control. Because researchers could compare countries where bat populations had plummeted with those where they hadn't, and the fungus itself was not discriminatory, so it was already controlling for other factors across the board that you often have to consider and eliminate for in laboratory conditions, like socioeconomic factors and other health conditions and so on. The sad thing is, this isn't even the only study like this. There's all kinds of research out there related to declining wildlife populations and the downwind effects on human health and society. One study out of India showed us that the loss of vultures over time increased deaths in humans because vultures weren't around to clean up disease-carrying roadkill and other gross waste. In the US, pesticide use increases during years when the plague of cicadas rises from the depths of the earth like the demon spawn that they are, and the people born in those years are shown to do worse academically and are more likely than their peers to drop out of school at some point. More infants also die during the cicada spawn years too. Because we live in a wealthy, hibernating, industrialist, Gilded Age nightmare, our capitalist systems don't really give a shit about an 8% increase in baby deaths. It's extremely unfortunate, and maybe that's actually the spookiest fact of them all. But what the system might care about is that Frank's study also discovered that increased pesticide use can't make up for the lack of bats, economically speaking. Maybe this is something that the people in power will snap to attention for. Pesticides don't work as well as bats do for controlling pest populations. Farmers in countries with declining bat populations are finding their crop quality diminishing, and they have fewer healthy crops to sell, which means revenue is down by about 29% for them. Add in the increased cost of additional pesticides, and we can directly trace a $27 billion loss to farmers in these areas across a span of about a decade. I'm kind of grossed out by this next fact, but we've put a number on the lives of the children we've lost, but that's a thing in our society, I guess, so add in those costs and we're up to $40 billion. The spookiest fact about bats is not how they're going to suck your bloods or get caught in your hair, because that's actually a myth and it doesn't happen anyway, but you're also really unlikely to get rabies. I mean, sure, still get the shots if you're exposed to a lot of bats, but the scariest thing about bats is that populations are collapsing, and bats actually serve as a natural pesticide. So pesticide use is therefore increasing, and that's leading to a big rise in deaths of our children. And all this is a really awkward Halloween time fact, because Halloween is really such a kid-friendly holiday now. I know, because I'm a cool kid and I love Halloween. But be careful out there, and I don't mean trick-or-treating. Take a look at some guides for reducing pesticide exposure in your own life, and make sure to advocate for systemic solutions that will get us to a place where we aren't using as many pesticides overall. I'm planning to do a follow-up video with the guidelines for that and the solutions for pesticide overuse, so make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button so you can be around to see that. Let's speak for the bats, because they can't speak for themselves. They can really only say something like... And even if they do suck out all your bloods, they won't want to now, because your blood's full of pesticides. I'll see you in the next one.